Y'all, this is gonna be a controversial video, so get strapped in for this one. I have been avoiding it, but let's finally talk about it. Polin. When I heard that Bridgerton season 3 was coming up, I was so excited for Penelope and Colin's love story. I was ready. I expected a similar format as season 1 and season 2. I wanted to see how this love story of theirs would blossom and unfold. Of course, I was hoping that certain elements that were in the book would be removed, as I talked about in my previous video. But even with that, I was excited. Not to mention, the way the trailers were edited, there seemed to be so much chemistry. They seemed to have a lot of steamier moments, and they also had Penelope finally telling Colin off about the comment that he made at the end of season 2. So I was excited. I was excited to see how this chemistry would bloom. And when part 1 dropped, I didn't feel it. And what's worse is that when I went to go look online to see what other fellow content creators were saying, or even in the Bridgerton subreddit, I feel like I was low-key being gaslit, and maybe I just didn't look hard enough. Maybe I just didn't see the chemistry enough between the both of them, and maybe I had missed certain signs and I had to squint hard enough. But let me tell you something. If I have to squint and look for clues to try and believe that two characters have chemistry, maybe the truth is the chemistry is not as visible. So what is necessarily missing? I do think that this couple has potential. I mean, in the books, they certainly had potential, despite all the red flags that Colin was showing. And of course, I'm very aware that part 2 is coming up, and I'm still excited to see how it unfolds. But it's clear that something is not adding up, at least in these first 4 episodes. But first, if you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Deborah, student, singer, songwriter, and everything else in between. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my favorite TV shows, movies, and books. And today, we're talking about Polin. The first issue that became very evident that no one really is talking about is the lack of Lady Danbury. Now, you may be thinking, Deborah, what does Lady Danbury have to do with Polin? Surprisingly, a lot in the books. I really despise how the writers have changed Lady Danbury's influence on Penelope and Colin's relationship, and also on Penelope herself. Because in the books, Lady Danbury is actually the biggest catalyst for a lot of happenings within the Polin storyline. If you don't know, Lady Danbury in the book starts out with a quest of looking for who Lady Whistledown is. She starts by telling everyone in the crowd that if they can find who this Lady Whistledown is, that she would give them a significant amount of money as a reward. This starts a quest that evidently brings people together within the town, but also brings Penelope and Colin together as well. And very quickly, Lady Danbury realizes just how smart and intelligent Penelope is, and recognizes how everybody has been underestimating her. Not to mention, a lot of the scenes where Lady Danbury, Colin, and Penelope are together also bring important moments which are very, very great catalysts for their relationship. A lot of the times, Colin would come and meet Lady Danbury and Penelope if they were talking together, and often you would see more of his sweet personality in how Lady Danbury handles him and how she treats him despite him being a charmer. She always approved of Colin, even in the books, and Colin was a big red flag book-wise. But this approval of hers would also be a great moment for Penelope and for Colin to interact even more in small ways, for them to have little conversations that are actually necessary for them to build up their relationship. Without this in the show, I definitely feel like you can see how that is missing here. Now, if you just watch the show only, you might not necessarily have missed Lady Danbury, but for everyone who is at least aware of the book storyline, you can see how empty it sort of feels, because Penelope is missing somebody to finally see her for who she is before Colin sees her for who she is. And that woman is Lady Danbury. In fact, she acts sort of like a pseudo mother figure for Penelope, which helps her in her confidence. She tells Penelope a lot of the times to start believing in herself and to start seeing herself as more, which is definitely more needed in this show than anything. As of part 1, to me, a lot of the times it feels like Penelope is really trying to just upgrade herself and do the best that she can for herself, and no one is really on her side, which includes Portia. I know there are some alternative opinions that people think that Portia is just being realistic, and for this time period, a lot of mothers were very removed from their daughters, but I think that Portia is not a great mother, and she's never been kind to Penelope, and Penelope just really needs to catch a break from somebody, and that somebody is supposed to be Lady Danbury. Also, I think we tend to forget the influence that Lady Danbury has had on the previous couples. Let us not forget that Lady Danbury is the reason why Kate and Edwina were even allowed in the town in the first place in the second season, and she's one of the most important catalysts for Simon and Daphne Daphne in season 1 alongside Miss Violet Bridgerton. The both of them really work in great pairs, and I'm so surprised and a little bit upset that she's been more focused on Francesca's storyline and finding matches for Francesca and other ladies of the ton, rather than Penelope herself, who deserves it the most this season. Now, I've seen in the part 2 trailer that Lady Danbury seems to have more specific scenes, so hopefully we can get more of her involvement towards the later half of the show, but I do think it's a big disservice to both of them and even their chemistry. They needed someone to guide them in their relationship, and Lady Danbury was that person, especially since the mother figure in Penelope's life is so emotionally absent from her. She needs someone to support her, and it breaks my heart every time that Portia's even on screen, because I can't stand that woman. But anyways, let's move to my second point. Another big plot point that I think was really badly handled was the words that were said by Colin at the end of season 2 and how that was addressed in season 3. So at the end of season 2, Colin utters those horrible words that he would never marry Penelope Featherington, and we see her cry and break down towards the end, and it gave such a good series finale. And in the books, this is also a very, very big plot point. It sits in her mind constantly, and she at least ruminates about it for the first whole chapter. And naturally, if I heard something like that being told about me in front of other men in a society where your reputation is extremely important and your attractability or your virtue, quote unquote, really relies on your reputation, that would break me. I do feel like the writers missed out on an opportunity for Penelope to sort of drive this out a little bit longer, because I mean, look at the gravity of the situation. Let's take a comparison of someone who also said a bunch of ignorant words that was a Bridgerton. Anthony. Remember in season 2 where Anthony also made disparaging comments about women, and that sentence, that simple sentence that he said, was dragged out for about 3 to 4 episodes, and it was one of the biggest reasons that Kate refused to trust Anthony, and he had to work to get in her good graces. And what did he do? He tirelessly courted Edwina. He sent her a horse, and that wasn't enough. They had to have a match, and that wasn't enough. It wasn't until he worked hard by the 5th or 4th episode did he finally start to slowly prove himself. But this same treatment hasn't been given to Colin, and it should have. He should not have been able to kiss Penelope in that carriage as early, in my personal opinion. He should have worked for it better. He should have pined for it better. And I personally think it's one of the reasons that that carriage scene feels so undeserving, besides the fact that actually Penelope is also supposed to be found out as Lady Whistledown before they get married. As much as I want to see Polin, I also want to see a man that is actually working for a woman and recognizing that his words were taken extremely seriously, and his words, especially towards the woman he's supposed to marry, when he said them out loud so carelessly, would hurt his future partner. And I feel like the show is just really glossing over that. It should have been dragged out longer. I feel like it's something the writers should have definitely used towards in their story to make sure Colin would work a little bit harder, not just pining by looking at her across the room or kissing her. He should have worked harder and recognized just how much his words could have hurt somebody. And the fact that that is so easily neglected because she's Penelope and she's in her 3rd season already, considering the fact that Kate herself was already considered a spinster, it's not a good enough excuse. And I feel like it really hurts their sort of storyline and makes everything feel so rushed. I'm pretty sure this has been heard before, so I'll keep this point short. One of the biggest problems that hurts this relationship and the believability of their relationship is not having enough screen time. Penelope and Colin are supposed to be friends to lovers, and just like enemies to lovers, they need time to build their relationship. The problem is that the writers this season didn't really understand that. Perhaps maybe the writers thought that because the both of them had already been friends, that it would be easier and they wouldn't have to build that original chemistry that got us hooked for season 1 and for season 2. You see, in season 1 and season 2, both love interests didn't really know each other before, so you really had to give a good foundation as to why their chemistry should be believable. But I think the writers this season probably thought that because the both of them are friends, that they should just go off from there and that it would naturally build itself. But with so little screen time, it doesn't really work. Just relying on their friendship alone doesn't really make you see the chemistry that is supposedly building up within Colin especially. In fact, I would argue that being friends to lovers and that character trope takes more time to develop, because now you have to unlearn some of the ways you saw that person and relearn them as a lover or a partner. In the show, Colin had friend-zoned Penelope, or at least kept her as a friend in his mind the whole entire time. And what I mean by that is he saw her as a friend that supported him, and only as a friend. And that is what we were exposed to for 2 whole seasons. How is it that that mindset is supposed to change within a matter of 2-3 episodes? The problem is the writers don't realize that they've gotten their audience so used to seeing both characters as friends and Penelope just being in love with Colin and having a crush on him that was not reciprocated, that they don't realize you need a certain amount of time to be able to make sure that that goes to a proper change. And those changes have to be earned with new obstacles or with new challenges in their friendship for us to believe that they're both finally on the same field when it comes to romance. For us to believe that Colin is truly deeply in love with Penelope. And because it hasn't been executed well with all the other points, sometimes it feels a little bit forced. It is as if Colin is being forced to see Penelope as more than a friend rather than it coming naturally. What would have worked is that within each episode, Colin would notice something very, very significant about Penelope. For example, notice how in the previous season, we can believe that Eloise puts 2 and 2 together when she believes that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. What does she start with? She starts to look at Penelope in a completely different way. And then you can literally see the boxes ticking off in her head. Then she goes as far as to follow Penelope home and to ransack her whole entire room. Or how her curls fall right in front of her face. Or how she smiles when there's something that really makes her laugh. Or her laugh itself. I do understand that we had the dream scene where he has a dream of her. But I mean, even in the previous season when Anthony would talk about Kate, he would talk about how she infuriated him and yet how brilliant she was and how that infuriated him. And we're not really getting that much of that for now. However, I have seen in the trailer that he does notice that Penelope's fingers are laced with ink, which finally, thank God, he's starting to get some more clues. But I do wish that he would have been a little bit more observant so that it would have made the upcoming scenes that are going to be important to him finding out who Lady Whistledown is more significant. Another point I hope that they definitely touch on in part 2 of the show is Colin finally understanding Penelope's love language. Penelope, all of her life, has been watching Colin. So why is it so difficult for that to be reciprocated with Colin watching Penelope for once? Penelope understands what Colin's language of love is. She understands that he is a writer. She sees his passion. She sees how his words, when they're translated on paper, can really write a story. Colin, he hasn't figured out her love language. You see, even between the simple meeting of Francesca and Sterling, even though they don't really know each other and they don't really speak much, Sterling is a man of action. He recognizes that Francesca lights up when she talks about the pianoforte and her simple criticism of the music. And what does he do? He finds a way to communicate with her that is beyond words. Colin hasn't done that. He hasn't gone to meet Penelope to say, hey, I think you love to read books, so here, I got you this, and I think it might help you. He hasn't really done that at all. All in all, I still do have hope that these two will come together in a significantly better way. I'm very, very excited for part 2. And at least from what I've seen in the trailer, things seem to be picking up a little bit more. So I will continue to hold my hope out for now. And I hope to make an update video about this with hopefully a more positive note. But anyways, you guys tell me down below how you all are feeling. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I'm very, very happy. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers and it has been a dream come true. Also, if any of you are interested in getting to know more about my personal life or seeing more vlogs, check out my second channel called Deborah's Diary, where I post vlogs about law school and more personal stuff over there. More vlogs will be coming very, very soon, so make sure to subscribe. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye!